Hi, my name is Celia Basquet, and I decided to interview somebody from the transgender community. I'm just going to refer to her as interviewee throughout the presentation. So, quick background about her. Her age is 30, ethnicity and race is Filipino. She was born in America, and her parents are from the Philippines. Their religious background is Christianity. She was born male and began her transitioning about 2 years ago into female. She is a college student. She works within the arts. She worked with a museum, and she's also a professional choir singer and piano player. And she is an activist for the transgender community. She also loves animals, so she dog sits and walks dogs on the side. And she's very well traveled. She actually just came back from a Europe trip, singing in choirs professionally. Her transition journey, she suffered through depression throughout her life. First, she decided she identified as a gay male, but she actually was not attracted to gay men. She had a suicidal attempt during college due to her identity issues and also lack of religious and family support. When she first came out, her family made plans to send her to conversion therapy, which, if you're not familiar with that, that is kind of sending someone away to a camp and them going through psychological, emotional training, quote unquote, to turn them straight again. It's unsuccessful and can be very abusive. Finally, she had a realization of her true identity, which was that she was female. She believes that she was born female mentally and in her soul and her being, but she was born with different physical parts that don't match who she is on the inside. Through counseling, she began the transition journey. She personally uses hormonal treatments, counseling, and finding a community as part of her journey. Unfortunately, her family is still estranged, but she has found new family through the transgender community and accepting friends and a new church and religious community that's more accepting. She continues to face discrimination and many challenges, such as when she has tried to find a new home or trying to figure out her career path. The immersion activity that I participated in was a social gathering that happens every Thursday with the Hampton Roads transgender community at a local gay bar. Usually consists of about 6 to 10 people on average every Thursday that show up. When I went, there were 10 present, including myself. We met at a longer table, some tables pushed together towards the middle back part of the bar. The overall purpose of the Hampton Roads transgender community group for this one particular activity is to meet other transgender people and create an atmosphere of trust, friendship, safety, and any assistance they might need. Overall, it was very casual, just getting together, having drinks. The overall goal is to just help other transgender people feel that they can make like-minded friends or have people that are going through the same journey as them. The membership included an average age, I'd say about mid-20s to early 40s. The age is definitely over 21 for this particular event because it's at a bar, but anyone of any age is welcome. It included different people from different races and geographical areas. There were some people that just moved here from North Carolina, or a few years back, somebody from Georgia. There wasn't a person there when I went, but they said that they've met somebody from Russia that came. They actually use an app called Meetup that anyone can use to meet any type of groups, but there's a Hampton Roads transgender group up on there, section on there, and that's how they kind of get together, meet up, or word of mouth. The interview, when asked the importance or level of importance for the interviewee to be a part of the membership, part of this group, she said it was extremely important. It helps her feel a sense of belonging, since many times in her life she was cut off from her church that she grew up with, or her mom and dad, or in society where she feels often shunned. She says it helps motivate people and herself to continue their journey of transition. She mentioned that the hormones, which is also noted as a second puberty, plus the social stigma that follows, is incredibly draining for a person to go through. So just being able to meet up with people who are also going through it and talk through it really offers another level of support. A positive dimension, or a couple that she has, is that mostly knowing that you aren't alone. This particular group, transgender community, allows them of Hamptons, allows them to connect with the new people that have moved here, as I mentioned earlier. This helps battle the depression that they face and allows them to identify with just who they are and feel free and not as fearful or judged. A negative dimension is the awful stigma that follows transgender community. She said that it's always seen as inappropriate from the main society. Trans women are usually seen as fetishes or tied to the porn industry or fantasies. And one of the downsides of being in the transgender community is that the society also doesn't discuss the journey before their transition. A lot of times, and the people that I met in my activity was, they were all very, very depressed and miserable before transitioning. They felt like their body wasn't theirs, and they were constantly in battle. And once they started transitioning, although they faced many fears or stigmas and so forth, it was the first time that they actually feel a part of their body. They feel like themselves. The transgender community is still extremely underrepresented and small, even in the game community. They mention in the group that this is usually because people have a fear of coming out, so usually hide it. It was mentioned from the interview that trans women suffer more discrimination than trans men. Effects on social life. It's not a thriving community, so it's not very robust. There is pride in belonging to the community, but there's still a lot of fear attached of what outsiders will do and what they'll say. The beginning of transition is more difficult and causes isolation, and places to meet are usually bars, and the big downside of this is there's more alcohol-fueled situations and quote-unquote straight or regular bars that can be a risk. According to interviewee, just a little fact that she's an activist, so she had this ring that throughout the year, 20 trans women are murdered in the U.S. for being trans. The more recent ones are activists. This hinders their social life because they're scared to go out and just meet people. Effects on career, loss of income and job altogether. Interviewee used to teach piano. She informed parents of her transition, or that she was about to, and every one of the families pulled out except for one, so she lost her income and had to quit that. The state of Virginia does not have protection for the LGBTQ community for work, meaning they can be fired or not hired at all, just based on who they are. On housing, same thing as the job. Virginia allows LGBTQ community to be denied housing, so they have difficulties finding a place. Legal paperwork for a transgender person may not match their name. That's usually what gives them out. Or their beginning of their transition to their appearance is obviously like somebody that is a trans woman still looks like a man because they're in the beginning of hormones. Hamptons does have a transgender assistant program that does help find housing for transgender community, and my interviewee is a part of that assistance program. Other issues that this person or interviewee or people face in the transgender community is spreading awareness and education. Since she's an activist, she is a part of a group called Equality Virginia. She attends schools and churches to tell her story and answers any questions that people might have. And then some political action that she takes part of is the Day of Action in Richmond. They go once a year and they speak to lobbyists and reach out to the Congress members to try to reverse the housing and working laws that the LGBTQ community faces right now. Comparing and contrasting, the interviewee was extremely accurate in their generalized findings based on some research that I did and a report of the 2015 U.S. Transgender Survey on the topic of the workplace and housing discrimination. It was found, and this is a direct quote, the findings reveal disturbing patterns of mistreatment and discrimination and startling disparities between transgender people in the survey and the U.S. population when it comes to the most basic elements of life, such as finding a job, having a place to live, accessing medical care, and enjoying the support of family and community. Survey respondents also experienced harassment and violence at alarmingly high rates. Another comparison was the comments on discrimination, violence, and suicide from a different journal article, and they mentioned a survey called Injustice at Every Turn. Direct quote is 63% of respondents experienced some form of discrimination due to bias about their gender identity, including the loss of a job, bullying, and physical and sexual assault. 41% of respondents reported they had attempted suicide, a rate that's 25 times higher than that of the general population. The only thing I couldn't really find specifics on, possibly based on because of lack of research, or maybe because men tend to pay for sex more than women, I couldn't find any specifics on if trans women face actual more discrimination than trans men, or violence or sexual violence, as the interviewee mentioned to me. Intersecting oppressions. Being transgender includes other identities as well. For instance, my interviewee is Filipino and Christian, and then also transgender. Culture from other backgrounds cause major friction in family dynamics. To be a double or even triple minority causes deep levels of depression, fear, identity crisis, and social struggles. Things to keep in mind when counseling transgender community would be every journey is different and unique. Some pursue surgical, some just hormonal, some only dress differently. The quote that my interviewee said is, "There is no right or wrong way to transition." She also said it's important to take other cultural aspects into account, as mentioned earlier. She said, quote, "Don't just focus on transgender, focus on their religious background, their family structure, and ethnicity." Depression is very common, and high suicide rates also need to be thought of when counseling transgender community people. My personal takeaway is it opened my eyes to realizing it is a multifaceted cultural influence. The whole Filipino and transgender and Christianity, having all those together really shapes that person and their thought processes and who they are. The battle before transitioning really struck to me. Listening to everyone's stories at the table was very sad, but also uplifting to hear the peace that they found when they did finally begin their transitioning. And since then, talking to other people, the extreme lack of understanding and lack of education that I hear from other people is alarming. Most importantly, though, transgender people are just looking to live their best life, just like all of us. They want to feel comfortable in their own skins while finding love, family, and a purpose in their life. And these are my sources from my research, and that concludes my cultural immersion experience.